Welcome back to His Fire for Me. I'm Jesse, and today I've got a compilation video for you. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll probably recognize that my wife Kim has been going through the book 365 Ways to Live Cheap. Now, this book is broken up into different sections, and she recently finished the first section titled The 10 Biggest Tips for Living Cheap. So in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and put together those daily doses of frugality that talked about those 10 tips into one video, in case you missed them individually or in case you're interested in hearing them all together as a simple reminder. So sit back and enjoy this quick video on the 10 biggest tips for living cheap.
These are the 10 biggest tips for living cheap. Tip number 1, take little steps, not big ones. Making changes to your everyday lifestyle is hard. That's why so many people try diets and eventually fail. They start off believing that they can make dramatic changes to their life and it works for a while. Eventually, though, they fall off the wagon and all of that weight they lost comes right back. Side note, 95% of diets fail. Diets do not work. That's not the purpose of this particular channel, so we won't dive into it. But this analogy here, I think, could use a little bit of work. Cutting back on your spending is much the same. If you go at it with a high level of intensity at first, eventually you'll rebound and go on a spending spree. The best route to success, then, is to take little steps, not big ones. Find one tactic in this book and focus on just that tactic for a few weeks, incorporating it into your life. Then try another, then another. Soon you'll have made that big change you dream about, and it will fit as naturally as a glove. So I've done some work around anti-diet and health at every size. And I think one illustration that you could incorporate would be if you're trying to encourage healthy habits in your life, say you don't naturally like to eat vegetables, but you think vegetables have nutrients and you'd like to incorporate more of them, start out small, Don't eat vegetables at every meal. Find a few vegetables that you like and incorporate them with lunch, for example, or maybe make up some broccoli that you have at dinner time and you grow to like that broccoli. So anytime you're trying to encourage something positive or healthy or a change in your life, it's easier to do that if you break it down into little goals and little increments as opposed to trying to take everything on at once. So tactic number 1 that we can all think about and incorporate would be taking little steps, not big ones. Today is number 2. Realize that you are not alone in this journey. Some people spend money like it's going out of style, racking up 5 figures in credit card debt, multiple vehicle loans, student loans, and mortgages too. If you're struggling with debt and making ends meet, know you're not alone in this experience and that there are people out there who can help you through this. Whether it's your family, your friends, or people online who are sharing their experiences, don't give in to the sense that it's hopeless. There is hope and there are people who want to help you. I think that the really interesting part of the FIRE community online is that it is a community. Jesse's let me know that he's connected with so many of you and he's growing by watching your channels. You guys are able to comment on each other's thoughts and ideas and have dialogue about what FIRE means to you and how to reach FIRE and how to incorporate frugality and other ways to invest. And I think that there is a community out there, especially with the internet and the resources that brings to us. And so seek out your community, find other people who are really interested in frugality, in being thrifty, in saving, in retiring early, in investing, and get to know those people and have them and their support help you along the way. So you are not alone in wanting to live a more frugal or cheap lifestyle. There's plenty of other people out there. We just have to find them. All right. And tip number 3 is to spend less than you earn. Your primary goal each month should be to spend less than you bring in. If you do that consistently, over and over again, your financial situation will improve. There are a lot of ways to make sure you're doing this: an old-fashioned budget, complete abstinence from credit cards, putting some of your income into savings immediately before you even begin to spend it. But they'll all come down to one rule: spend less than you earn. The tips in this book will help you with spending less so that you can achieve this goal every month. I think as most people in the FIRE community know, or people who are generally trying to increase their savings, the only way that you can increase your savings and save for retirement is if you spend less than you earn. or at least that's the most common way. So for this particular tip, I found it really helpful to have a budget, and I think that they talk a little bit more about budgets later on in the book. But for this particular tip, having a budget really lets you direct your money where you want it to go. And one of those avenues for direction can be increasing your savings. So spend less than you earn, and you will be on your way to having a savings. And you will be on your way to having a savings account and growing your wealth and planning for retirement. On number 4, which is calculate how much you really make. Many of the tactics of living cheap seem like a waste of time to many people. I'm not doing that to save $5, is a common thing to say. If you feel that way, try this experiment. First, calculate how many hours you work in a year. But that's not all. Add to that the hours spent driving to and from work, the hours spent working on stuff at home, the hours spent entertaining and supporting coworkers, the hours spent shopping for work supplies, and so on. If you spend even a sliver of time on a task for your job, count it. Next, calculate how much money you earn in a year, including your benefits. You can get that off your paycheck stub. From that, subtract taxes, the cost of commuting, gas, oil change, wear and tear on the car, other maintenance, the cost of work clothes, the cost of childcare, the cost of other supplies you need to purchase, and so on. Anything that you buy for your job, subtract it here. Then, divide the amount you actually earn by the number of hours that you really work. This can be a painful process. What does that number mean? You can use that as a comparison for everything that you do. Thinking of buying an expensive gadget, use that real hourly rate to figure out how much of your life you're giving to your job to get that gadget. Wondering if a money-saving task is worth it? See how much time it will take and how much money it will save. You'll be very surprised. Things like making your own laundry detergent, we'll get to that in tip number 18, end up earning far more in savings for the time spent than actually going to work will earn you. I haven't done this calculation for myself. It would be interesting to try it. But Jesse and I sometimes would go through periods of time where we would purchase something or we would be thinking about purchasing something. And what we would do is we would equate the cost of that item to other areas of our life. So we at one point scored a really great deal on some kayaks. We were looking to get into kayaking, and we had found some kayaks on Craigslist. And I think each kayak was maybe $250, and they were really nice boats that we could get some really good use out of. And so anytime we would think about buying anything else, we would think, well, how many kayaks is that? Well, that's worth half a kayak. That's worth 2 kayaks. And it just kind of gave like a unique way of measuring the cost of things. I think that this is sort of a little less fun and probably more sobering way of actually looking at what you're earning and what your money can buy you. But I think if you kind of keep in perspective, what is something that I'm buying? What does that actually cost me in actual dollars and in other opportunities? I think that's a really good exercise to try. So I might sit down a little bit later and see how much I'm actually earning at my job. And it's interesting to do this thought experiment. On number 5, which is record every penny you spend for a month. Record every penny you spend for a month. Money slips through our fingers in simple and subtle ways. We spend a little here on something forgettable, spend a little there on an unimportant thing, and at the end of the month, it's panic time. We're left with very little money. Spend a month keeping track of every penny that you spend, noting exactly how much you spend and what you spent it on. At the end of the month, go through it and note which expenses were actually essential and which were frivolous. You'll find 2 things. 1, the need to write your spending down makes you more vigilant against wasteful spending, and the end of the month review of your records will surprise you when you see how much of your spending was non-essential. Use that information as a springboard to see what you need to work on. I think this is sort of budgeting basics, but I do like that it gives a definitive time period to try this tactic. I think sometimes when people think about first initiating a budget or trying to budget their money, they think, man, this sense of restriction I will feel forever. But budgets aren't actually restrictive. They're simply ways that you are intentional about where you want to spend your money. So I think this is a good first step for 1 month of time to write down everything that you spend. You can do that physically on paper. I have a little notebook that I carry in my purse. Usually it's to write down any ideas or thoughts maybe that I have if I don't have access to my cell phone, to use the note section there. You can use the note section on your cell phone if you have a smartphone. If you do have a smartphone, there are a lot of really good apps that you can use as well. Jesse and I have set up our budget through Every Dollar, and it's really intuitive and easy to use. There's a computer program that goes with the app on our cell phone. But if I'm at the store and I leave the store, I can simply write down exactly what I've purchased. When it comes to groceries and things, I often will write down just groceries cost this much. But for this particular exercise, it might actually be a good exercise to write down a lot of what you've bought. So each receipt at the grocery store will break out the different sections. So you could even do, I spent this much on produce, I spent this much on non-perishables, etc., etc. That way you kind of get an idea too of, what am I buying at the store? Am I buying some non-essentials, some things that maybe I could cut out if I wanted to? Again, I don't think that the point of a budget is necessarily to be restrictive. It's simply to direct where your money goes. And the point of this exercise is to see where your money's going. So if you don't already have a budget, and you don't exactly know what you're spending your money on each month, this could be a really good exercise for the coming month to pay attention to what you're spending it on, and evaluate whether or not that's where you want to be spending the money that you are working so hard to earn. Number 6, which is to master the 10-second rule. Want to curb that leaky faucet of unnecessary spending? Here's a great tactic. Whenever you're in a store and you pick up an item, hold it for 10 seconds. During those 10 seconds, ask yourself if you really need it, and also if that money wouldn't be better used somewhere else. You'll almost always find yourself putting that unnecessary item back on the shelf and walking away, quite proud that you didn't waste your money on something so unnecessary. I think that there are a few different principles in this section that are really helpful. I think the first is to control impulse purchases. This sort of comes back to a topic that we've talked a lot about on our Frugal Friday segment, where we're covering intentionally spending money and intentionally being frugal. So if you are holding something for 10 seconds, you're being intentional about whether or not you want to buy it. I think it's so easy sometimes when we walk into stores, especially Target, I'm looking at you, and you go through that first section that they've curated to have a lot of really seasonal, flashy, colorful, trendy, in-the-moment items. And it's so easy to thoughtlessly pick one of those up, think, oh, this is fun, put it in your cart, and then continue on. If you're really deliberately thinking about the item and the opportunity cost that comes with owning that item, it's sort of a different thing, right? So you're holding it and you're thinking about the price. And because you know how much you actually make an hour, you know how many hours you have to work to have this item. We learned about finding out how much you actually make an hour in, I think, step number 4 of this book. So as you're holding that, you're thinking about the cost, like the actual physical cost. But then there's other costs, right? So what don't you get to do because you've chosen to own this item? What don't you get to spend your money on because you've chosen to own this item? And then when you take this item home, where does it live? How much time do you have to spend cleaning it? Will you actually use it, or will it just take up space? If it takes up space, is it something you're going to have to dust around? Is it something that you're going to have to move to find a different spot for? Are you going to have to get rid of something else to make room for it? That takes time, and time equals money, right? Time could be spent doing something else that gives your life meaning, could be spent generating more wealth. So I think this consumption, this thoughtless consumption of items, is something that our society makes it really easy to do. And so I really like that this tip is saying, hold the item in your hand for 10 seconds. Really, really think about whether or not you want to bring it into your life and into your home. And if you do, buy it. If you don't buy it. So I think the part that they're missing here is the actually purchasing of items. There have been times that I've gone into a store and I've picked something up and I've looked at it And maybe I've put it in my cart, but I know it's just holding place there for a minute while I do a few other things, and I'm still kind of thinking about the item, and maybe I'm not physically holding it in my hands, but I haven't committed to it yet because I know that I need to go through the mental exercise to make sure it's something I really want, something I have space for, something I have time for, something I'm willing to give up future opportunities for. And then as I come around, I think, I've been thinking about this item. I'm so excited about this thing I'm going to buy. And so I buy it, and it brings me joy. And I've intentionally made the choice to purchase it. And because I've intentionally made that choice, I'm very happy with what I have. So I think that that's the point here, is really think about what you're buying. Even smaller items, if it's not something that you know you need, like peanut butter or some grocery staple, but it's something that you think, oh, this could be fun at a summer barbecue, or this could be fun, as a piece of jewelry that I could wear. Just hold it, think about it, and then if it brings you joy, not to steal from Marie Kondo, but if it brings you joy and you've held it for 10 seconds and you've weighed the opportunity cost, then purchase the item and revel in your purchase. Because if you have the privilege and the ability to buy things that you enjoy, that's a really great spot to be in. So buy things that you really want. Don't buy things that you just picked up and were going to thoughtlessly purchase. All right, tip number 7, which is to master the 30-day rule 2. It's useful to use a similar approach with bigger purchases as well. Whenever you pick up an expensive but not immediately essential item, maybe anything that costs more than $20 or $30, and decide after using the 10-second rule that you do want to buy it, put it back on the shelf and wait 30 days. If you still remember and want the item in 30 days, then go back to the store and buy it. Most such purchases will float out of your mind long before then. Using this tactic keeps you from making impulsive buys of expensive things that manage to get past your 10-second filter. I think for this particular tip, the author wrote, maybe $20 or $30, but I think in today's world, $20 or $30 could be a rather large pack of toilet paper or maybe a pair of shoes that you absolutely need and that that you've needed for a while. So I think your number really is decided by you. Your number is decided by you. So you pick whatever that value is, and those are larger purchases for you, and then implement this 30-day rule when it comes to those large purchases. This will help you from impulse buying things that you truly probably don't need, like new gadgets or new gizmos. If it is something that you wind up needing, then by all means purchase it. If your washing machine breaks and part of your side business, like mine is managing a short-term rental, I couldn't do that without having a washing machine, because 2 to 3 times a week I'm taking that linen from our short-term rental and I'm washing it. So for me, a washing machine would be necessary, and that would be something that I wouldn't wait 30 days to go buy. If I was just upgrading voluntarily a laptop or something else where the thing that I have is working, but I would like something different, I would like something better, I would like something fancier, I would wait on that type of a purchase. I would wait the 30 days or maybe until next month, or I would come up with whatever timeline feels really comfortable to me that lets me know I'm going to come back to this thing. And for the things that you really want and the things that you really need and the things that pass this 30-day test, you're going to be thinking about them during that window of time. You're going to be looking at them, shopping for them, reading reviews about them, finding out which one is the best purchase for you. And so it's going to take up some time, some mental bandwidth. And when you get to the end of that 30 days, you're going to be prepared and ready to make that purchase and really excited and anticipatory for it as well. So it's a good rule to think about implementing in whatever format works for you. And tip number 8 is to keep track of your progress. Each month, figure out how much you earned, how much you spent, and how much you saved that month and record it. Then try to match that number the following month. This is, in effect, the simplest form of budgeting. You're merely trying to keep your spending under control from month to month. It also lets you see your continual progress. If you were able to live a bit cheaper and put just $50 a month into savings for 6 months, for example, you now have $300 saved up, showing you that your little changes are already adding up to something big. I think, again, this really ties back into the idea of having a budget. I am someone who enjoys spending. Granted, I've become quite a bit more intentionally frugal over the years of our marriage. But when Jesse and I were first trying to get on the same page financially, he was really encouraging us to have a budget. And I grew up with parents who had a budget, and I thought of a budget as something that was really restrictive. I thought that a budget was something that would make it so that I couldn't spend money that I had worked really hard for. And I really balked at the idea of having a budget. I think that all of you who are watching this channel probably already have a good concept of budgeting and why budgeting is important, and maybe you've incorporated it into your financial progress and goals. But I think if you haven't, budgeting is something that gives you a lot more freedom than you think it would. For a word that has so many negative connotations and that immediately feels like the little spender in you is going to shrivel up and die, it's actually a tool that really gives you the freedom to tell your money where you want it to go and to make sure that you are the one that's driving the spending ship and not some out of control spending habit who's impulsively buying things. So I do think that whether you have a more complicated budget or you have a more simplistic budget, just knowing where your money's gone and mapping it out is a really good first step. So I do think that if you don't have a budget, try this out, try it for a few months, and then you might just see like, wow, with this little simple tool, I'm able to really increase and grow my savings, which is something that I've wanted to do. So again, we use a tool called Every Dollar, but we've done paper budgeting in the past. We've used some other apps as well. So there's a lot of resources out there. Feel free to ask in the comments if you want any more suggestions about budgeting tools. I know that Jesse will respond with really good answers because he's so knowledgeable about all of this stuff. So I just recommend that if you don't have a budget, you start out with a really simple one like they say here, and kind of see where you're spending your money and tell your money where to go. Just talk about your money, especially with your partner. Many couples and families have a chaotic approach to money, with each person doing their own thing financially without understanding their partner's goals, desires, and challenges. Often, this results in partners hiding information from each other, such as high credit card statements, other debts, and this not only damages a family's financial situation, but can also damage a marriage. Take the time to sit down for an hour every month or two and go through your complete financial picture with your partner, including both your successes and mistakes. Plan goals together and actively support each other. If you are single, identify a money buddy whom you can be similarly open with. You can support each other in making good spending and financial choices and offer each other advice in difficult situations. So 9, talk about money, especially with your partner. I think as we go through this book, we will find some things that I very strongly agree with and some things that I actually don't agree with. And I think 9 is something where I'm kind of in the middle. So I do think that it's really important that you and someone that you're in relationship with have conversations about money and finances. And I think that it's important that you're on the same page, not with where you're headed necessarily, but with like the path that you're on. So for some couples, putting their finances together doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. It's not something that works for them. And so they maybe have separate finances and they have separate financial goals and objectives. Maybe one person really, really wants to retire early and have financial independence, and so they're on that path. And the other partner maybe doesn't want that. Maybe they are fine working for however long they would like to work. Maybe they're in a really fulfilling career and they don't have any plans to leave that career. And so for them, it might make more sense to spend money. So I think what's really important is that you have open communication about money, not that both of you are squirreling away your little, money nuts for the future, but that you're respectful of each other's plan and that you understand where each person is coming from. I think for Jesse and I, we have shared finances. We have a shared financial goal. I still think Jesse is definitely much more interested in finances and financial things and money than I am. I want to know that I have financial security, as in if I wasn't able to contribute financially for 6 months, we would still be okay. If Jesse wasn't able to contribute financially for 6 months, maybe longer, we would still be okay. I like to have an emergency budget or emergency fund so that if we do run into trouble, I know that we have some money squirreled away for that. And I like to know that we're headed someplace that has meaning for both of us. So I think having those initial conversations are really important to make sure that each of you knows kind of what the other person is looking for in life financially. But I think if somebody was to tell me that we needed to sit down once a month for 2 hours to talk about money, I would leave and be out in nature and not be part of that meeting, that financial summit that was happening monthly. So I think making sure that you're open about your concerns, about your needs, about your dreams, about your hopes, about where you want to go with money is really important. And making sure that your partner understands that, sees that, values that, recognizes it, and isn't going to take away from your plan, but can contribute to it or do their own thing. And you guys are both respectful and okay with that. I think that's what's most important, is to make sure that you've had those conversations with someone who's important in your life. When it speaks to those who maybe aren't paired up in a relationship where it would make sense to talk about money, I do think sometimes if you have someone that you want to have these conversations with, that's great. If you have someone, say you have a really big goal and you're having trouble meeting it and you need someone that can kind of encourage you and help hold you accountable if that's something you're looking for and really just kind of boost you up and keep you going, yes, find someone in this community, in Facebook groups, in your own personal life who's interested in the same sort of things, and create that dialogue and conversation and relationship with that person around this issue. I think that that is important to, again, be in community with people who are kind of on the same path as you. Number 10, which is to automate your savings. One nice thing about saving money is that you end up with more in your checking account over time. The savings slowly build up. For many people, the problem with that is that the extra money is a temptation to spend on unnecessary stuff. The solution is easy. Just save automatically. Have your bank set up an automatic transfer of a small amount each week from your checking to your savings, say $25 for starters. As you get more adept at saving money, increase that transfer amount and keep saving. That money can help out in emergencies, help with a big payment, or provide the starting material you need to begin investing. Automate your savings. Jesse and I have an emergency fund that isn't even with the rest of our money. It's in a completely separate bank in a completely separate account. And so it's not something that we really think about. We save that up to a set amount. And then now when it comes to savings, we're saving in sort of other ways. Jesse does a lot of our savings, and so it's just kind of a line item on our budget, and I don't really think about it. We do practice having sinking funds for specific things that we want to buy. And although that money stays in our checking account, because we don't really look at the balance on our checking account, but rather we look at the budget sheet that we work off of in every dollar, we're able to see that the vacation fund maybe has $700 in it, and we're looking to get it up to $1,500 before we buy tickets to go somewhere or something. And so we do have these little sinking fund items for things like home improvement if we know that we need to put a new roof on one of our rental properties, or we want to redo the deck here at our house or something. So we do practice having sinking funds that we put money into when we're making up our budget. And then at the beginning, when we were first starting to save, we did have some automated savings that would happen. But I do think when you're new to the practice of saving money, it is a good idea just to automatically have that money get transferred out of your account. If you're working off of your checking account and you're not paying attention too much to your savings, then you wouldn't be tempted to spend the money that you're actually looking to squirrel away for an emergency or a bigger item that you're looking to purchase, or something for retirement or the future. Another really easy way to automatically save is to have your place of employment pull out money for an automated retirement plan. I know that Jesse did a video on this channel not too long ago, and I think that is something that a lot of people miss out on, unfortunately. And it's something that I think if your employee does a match, for sure, you're leaving money on the table if you don't automatically take advantage of that. It's always easier to have money just never come to you but go into a long-term savings than have it come to you and then have to decide to invest in your future as opposed to getting the instant gratification of buying something right now. So if your employer offers a match, definitely invest up to that level. Even if they don't, consider if it meshes with your investment portfolio, just automatically letting your employer take that money out and putting it into an automated long-term savings account. All right, we have made it through the first, and according to this author, Trendham, top 10 tips for living cheap. So the next section that we will get into is going to be cheap tactics for appliances. I'm excited to dive into this rather technical kind of clinical knowledge about appliances and explore that with you. So I will see you back here tomorrow for another daily dose of frugality, and I appreciate you tuning in.